Good evening. It's 7 o'clock. My name is Scott Kisner. I'm the superintendent of schools. I want to first start and thank everyone to come out tonight. I recognize the weather might have made it a little bit more interesting, but this is an important meeting to make sure we keep the schedule. I want to first recognize school board members that are here, Ms. Patricia Healy, Ms. Jamie Decatur, Ms. Irene Egan, Ms. Pamela Young, and Dr. Sarah Chase. Mr. McCosker had a family emergency tonight, so and Ms. Holly Hazard, and so he could not be here. I also want to recognize we have a few principals that have joined us. I want to thank Ms. Foreman, principal of Stafford Elementary School, Ms. Austin, principal at Kate Waller-Barrett. I want to thank Dr. Smith, principal of Stafford Middle School, for helping us set up. And I want to recognize Ms. Carrie Neely, who's our chief elementary director officer. So this is our second meeting, and there were some things that we learned from the first meeting that I want to just go over. So at the first meeting, there was more people at the first meeting, and we had a lot of interest for questions to be asked. And what we forgot to do, and I think we've shared this already, is to ask people just to put one question on a card. Because what happened at the last meeting, and Cherie, Ms. Johnson will come up in a few minutes to talk about the process of some people, because we didn't tell them otherwise, put maybe 2 or 3 different questions on the same card. And to be fair to people, we want to try to get to as many questions from different people. The other thing is, some are not as many questions as comments, and we're trying to really address questions and less on comments. We're going to go over the schedule. There's going to be 2 nights where the school board's going to have dedicated time for public comment, and we hope you would take advantage of that opportunity. The other thing I want to mention, that I'm just going to start with this, and it was there were questions asked last time that we did not address, and I want to address it right now before we get into the presentation by the consultants. The question is, how are we addressing the diversity in the redistricting? And so let me address that. So diversity that we're describing, or most interested in, is how does it impact class sizes, how does it impact building capacity? We all could have different definitions of diversity. The one area of diversity is children, and I want to just make a comment, and hopefully I say it respectfully, okay? About 33% of our children that attend Stafford Elementary School, based on an economic model, qualify for free and reduced lunch. Great children, great families. Just so if you're interested, the state average is 44%, and Stafford is 33%. But that number, not so much the reduced part, it's free and reduced, it's the free part. That percentage, depending on if you exceed 30%, but it's not 30% just in 1 year, it's over 3 years. If your school has 30% or higher on free. So and I know there's some people, and I appreciate you coming back, came to the last meeting, and the slide that we showed does not really address what I am speaking about. It showed free and reduced, not just free. So tonight, and we didn't have time to switch it, but tomorrow morning, you could go, and every document that we are presenting, we are posting on our website on the redistricting section. So what I'm sharing with you right now, tomorrow, early tomorrow morning, if you are interested in this, you could see what the free number at the school in which you may be attending or at the school that you currently attend. What I will tell you, though, is that there's a lot of criteria that the school board has in their policy to look at for redistricting. And we had to make a decision of what are the criteria that are most important. I just share with you is that when you look at, so what you will see when you go to the website tomorrow is the current free and reduced lunch based on free, reduced, and collectively. And then you'll see Plan A and Plan B. And you will see that from the range from the highest school to the lowest school in this year and in Plan A and Plan B are pretty much the same. Do individual schools change? Yes. But does the division as a range? No. The other thing I would just say, and I'm not even saying you're saying this, but you might be thinking this, how does that really impact academic performance? And my answer, and I will tell you this is from many, many years' experiences working in school systems with 70, 80, 90% free and reduced lunch, that it doesn't impact. It doesn't impact if you have strong leadership, strong teachers, and great support. And truthfully, what's been somewhat satisfying to me, many of the comments that we received from parents to stay in the schools in which they are currently attending are schools that have one of our highest free and reduced lunch rates, which just again reinforces that those parents that are commenting have great satisfaction in the school that they're attending. Every single comment, I just want to make sure before I forget this, every single comment, and there's been a lot of emails, and we appreciate them, and we're trying to respond to ones that are very specific questions, are being forwarded to every school board member. And every question that's being asked, so we just had one 2 days ago, so we got to give us a little time. We are posting the question and the answer on our website. The other question that might be wondering is children who are English language learners. Okay, this doesn't as much impact class sizes, but it does impact how we will redirect resources. So children who are English language learners, certain schools have a greater percentage than other schools. As a division, we're about 8% of our children are English language learners. So there are state regulations and requirements, besides best practices, to provide extra resources, personnel, to support those children. So if your school has, you know, a number that's either going up or down in that area, you will either see increased resources or you might see decreased resources. And the last one I will mention that we will get into in greater detail, for parents that have children with disabilities, there have been some questions and concerns, to be honest, about the proposal for next year where those programs will be placed. But we have today, and we'll introduce the panel, our Executive Director of Student Services that oversees pre-K to grade 12 programs for children with disabilities, and she will be the person that will answer that question. So I'm going to stop here, except to say we do have somewhat of a smaller crowd than last time. And the other feedback that we got was, could you shorten the presentation? Okay, so we are really shortening the presentation. It'll be 10, 15 minutes the most. And if we're targeted to end at 8:30, but I don't think anybody would object if we are able to move a little faster because of the weather to get out earlier. But we are still targeting to 8:30, all right? But if we finish up at 8:15, you know, I will stay around, the school board will stay around, and if you want to ask individual questions, you're more than welcome. So I'm going to introduce and welcome our Director of Communications, Sri Johnson.
Good evening. My name is Sri Johnson. I'm the Director of the Office of Strategic Communication and Community Engagement. Many of you may have received note cards at the front door. You can place your questions on those note cards. After a presentation from our consultants with ArcBridge, I will serve as the moderator and read your questions. The consultants will answer the questions, and you can also continue to fill out those cards with your questions, and a member of the communication team will pick up the questions and bring them up here to me. We will wrap up the event at 8:20 p.m. or sooner and try to answer every question. If we do not answer this evening, we will respond to you within several days with information. Please be sure to place your name and email address on the card in case we have to follow up with you for that answer. Please note that if a question has already been answered, I will move on to the next card. This can be a frustrating time for some, but please remember to be respectful. Do not shout out questions. I will only respond to the note cards. There is another meeting coming up on January 23rd at H.H. Poole Middle School. That meeting also begins at 7 p.m. and ends at 8:30 p.m. You can also attend 2 school board meetings on February 12th and February 26th and voice your concern during the public comment section. Right now, I would like to introduce our panel. First up, we have Dr. Scott Kisner, our superintendent, which you just heard from. We also have Ms. Prateet Mathur with ArcBridge, our consultants. We have Mr. Scott Horan, our assistant superintendent for operation, followed by Mr. Matt Towson, supervisor of planning and GIS. And next up, we have Ms. Barbara Lancaster, supervisor of special programs and transportation. And last but certainly not least, we have Ms. Wendy Martin Johnson, our executive director of student services. And at this time, I would like to introduce our consultants with ArcBridge for the presentation. Thank you.
Good evening. I'd like to welcome you all to the second town hall meeting for elementary school redistricting. My name is Prateet Mathur, and I will be your presenter today. As per the timeline, this is the second meeting, and like Cherie said, there's going to be another meeting next Wednesday at H.H. Poole Middle School. Today, our goal is to present 2 plans for the SCPS elementary school attendance areas. These plans are based on the SCPS criteria, redistricting criteria that was provided to us. The plans have been reviewed by SCPS subject matter experts, and the plans were also presented to the SCPS school board on January 8th. Now to tell you who the subject matter experts were, we had representatives from the SCPS Transportation Office, SCPS Planning and GIS, Student Services, Stafford County Planning, and Stafford County GIS, or Geographic Information Systems. The redistricting criteria that we were supposed to use was, our goal was to balance enrollment across 17 elementary schools, targeting 85.6% utilization at 4th year. We were also supposed to look at proximity to schools, contiguity, connectivity. The goal was to keep the neighborhoods together, and I do want to emphasize as much as possible. Use 10-year enrollment projection data that was given to us, and also to use the SCPS planning units. The enrollment capacity data that was provided, and here, if you look at it, we have the program capacity, and we are targeting 85.6% based on the year 22-23. And if you noticed, if you had reviewed the program capacities talked about in the December 5th presentation, the program capacity was adjusted to include the special needs education program. I want to explain to you the planning units. The planning units are the building blocks that we use to create the plans A and plan B. The number of students here on this map, I'm showing you Stafford County, I'm showing you the planning units. There are about 411 planning units. And what we have done on this map is color-coded the planning units by the number of students that live in each planning unit. The color coding scheme is that lighter the color. So here, when you see the yellows, that is when it's going to be 0 to 10 students. And when you see the darker colors, there could be up to 185 kids in a planning unit. And this data is based on the September 2018 data, not including pre-K. Based on our analysis, we found that there were 5 schools which had high capacity utilization. And these schools were Winding Creek, Whitewater, Rocky Run, Stafford, Brent. And then there are 2 schools which had low capacity utilization, and these schools were Garrisonville and Rock Hill. There are 4 schools which have disconnected attendance areas, and on this slide you're seeing, On this slide you're seeing Hampton Oaks and Park Ridge. So here you see Hampton Oaks, and there are 3 disconnected areas, and you have Park Ridge and this area. And on the next slide, I'm going to show you Falmouth and Brent. And Falmouth has these 2 areas, and Brent has this little area. So we have 4 schools with disconnected areas. So having shown you the redistricting criteria, the planning units that were used as building blocks, I now present to you Plan A. And as you walked in, there were maps, Plan A and Plan B. And here, just to tell you how to read this map, the red line, the red outline is your existing boundary, and the yellow shows you the proposed boundary. The yellow for Rock Hill only, but color shows you what the proposed boundary is. And in this plan, we have 3,195 students that were affected, and that was based on the 2019-2020 enrollment projection data. Here we have a 7-year view of the schools are listed over here. We have their program capacity, and then we have the years. And I want to once again bring your attention to year 22-23 that was used, 85.6%. So if you look at it, this is what we have been able to achieve. And this is already on the website and will be put on the website again for your review later. Plan B, we have a different configuration we have presented to you. The scheme is still the same. You have the red outline, which is your existing boundaries, and the color shows the proposed boundaries. Now in this plan, we have 3,800 students affected based on 2019-2020 enrollment projection data. In this, we have the Plan B 7-year view. So we have the schools here, and we have the years. And once again, I want to show you the year 22-23, from where we got this 85.6% capacity utilization target. Okay. With this, what I'm going to do is, I'm going to show you just a couple of schools here to show you how to read the maps. And if you see the walls, we have a map, actually 2 maps for each school. We have Plan A, and right below it we have Plan B. So you can go and see those maps. And so here, just to show you, we have the program capacity for the school. And like I showed you before, the red outline is your existing area, and the color shows the proposed areas. On this slide, I'm showing you Plan A and Plan B, and I'm also showing you the schools that would be affected. The schools in this case that are affected are Brent and Garrisonville. So the neighboring schools do get affected. I'll just go through one more, and then we would open the forum for question and answers. In Plan A, we have listed, the way we have done the slides, we have listed all the neighborhoods here, which we took from Brent and assigned to Rock Hill. And if we gave any neighborhood to a neighboring school, like here, to Garrisonville, so this is the area that used to be Rock Hill, but we gave it to, we assigned it to Garrisonville in Plan A. Likewise, 2 changes. So this is how, when you get to see the slides, this is how we have organized them. And now I think I would like to invite Cherie to get on with the question and answers.
All right, thank you so much. So at this time, we will move to, thank you. We will move to the question and answer period. Okay, our first question. What would be the range of capacity values if the low incidence classes who struggle the most with change were left at their current schools?
All right, I got it. Matt Townsend, Supervisor of Planning and GIS. So the range of capacity values, if the low incidence classes were left at their current schools, cumulatively across the county increases by 6. And then obviously any school that has more or that is proposed to have an adjustment of their low incidence program would be adjusted. But cumulatively across the division, it's a 6 capacity difference, just based on programmatic locations and changes from current.
Okay. Next question. Who ranked the criteria? The school board? Okay, school board. Next question. How will Moncure maintain its strong PTO and volunteerism with such a great increase in students living in poverty and with limited English proficiency?
I think this is a question that was addressed Tuesday night. I think Principal Mackey and his staff will embrace all the children from whatever neighborhoods are assigned to Moncure, and through their hard work will cultivate a PTO, PTA presence that will support the school in years to come.
Let me just clarify when I said school board. The school board, if you go to the school board policy, they have a list, a lot of criteria, I don't know, 15, 16, a lot of them. So these come off that list. Okay.
Okay. Next question. Would you consider blended proposals?
So I think the question is, would there be another proposal? And that's an option the board could consider. The board, after all the feedback they receive and the cards and the comments, there's an A, there's a B, and there could be another one. That will be up to the board after they deliberate.
Next question. Please explain the purpose of taking Moncure from 5.7% limited English proficiency to 18.94% limited English proficiency, Plan A, or 22.34% limited English proficiency, Plan B, both which are the highest percentage for any elementary school in the county. Please explain.
So it's to keep as close as possible proximity of the school, those neighborhoods that are closest, the children in those neighborhoods, if they qualify for English language services, then they go to that school. And the services, the resources, follow the children. So again, that's the answer.
One of the goals of this redistricting was to keep neighborhoods together as much as possible. Please explain how Plan A and Plan B even come close to meeting this goal.
In Plan A, we have split 11 neighborhoods. And just to tell you, Stafford County has 766 neighborhoods, so just splitting 11 is less than 2%. And in Plan B, we have split 16 neighborhoods, and that is just 2%. So we did as much as possible.
This person says that Dr. Kisner said that the school board might add some other options for consideration. When will that happen? And will parents have an opportunity to comment on the revised plans?
I definitely said that, okay? Sometimes I'm told I said things that I don't remember saying it. Yes, so as I already described, the board and all their deliberations are going to be open, public, nothing behind closed doors. They'll be televised. There'll be work sessions. If it's a work session, it's it's in the Blandy complex. So if the board comes up with another plan, then they will have an opportunity for people to give input or feedback on that plan.
You've put the Arc Bridge proposal on the website. Would you put the final contract on the website too?
Absolutely. Certainly a public document. It is a contract, and we'll certainly post that.
Okay. Garrisonville Plan A targets Claiborne Manor for transfer of students from Brent to Garrisonville. Why does this plan advocate for that?
In Plan A or in Plan B, we are looking at redistricting criteria. We are looking at proximity to schools. We are looking at connectivity and contiguity. And most important, we are targeting 85.6%. So we will look at what you are saying here, but those were the reasons. We were using the redistricting criteria and knowing that Garrisonville and Rock Hill are the ones that could take more students, we were trying our best to balance it out.
Why did we prioritize attendance zones over neighborhoods attending same school?
What we have done is we have looked at the neighborhoods, we have looked at planning units, we have looked at proximity to school, and we have tried to put the schools, the neighborhoods which are close to their schools. In some cases, it was not possible because like Winding Creek, the school is already full, so we could not assign any more neighborhoods to them, but that was our criteria, and we did look at it. But if you have some specific cases, please let us know, and we will review them one more time.
Was CSR capacity adjusted for schools that will be CSR now and wasn't before?
At this point in the process, no CSR has been adjusted, but that's something that we're exploring moving forward. Class size reduction, so 30% or more free lunch.
This person is a realtor. Was resale value or real estate desirability a factor in this plan, or will it be in the future?
The answer is no.
Why did we do a redistricting to try to move England Run area from Brent 2 years ago, and now we are moving them but are now sending a new neighborhood right around the corner to Brent?
I do not have the history of what happened to England Run before, but let me tell you. England Run North. Let me just look it up real quick. Okay, England Run North used to be in Hartwood and Falmouth. And now we have in Plan A, we have in Falmouth and Brent, and in Plan B, it's all in Falmouth.
Okay, the next question.
Shuri, could you?
Go ahead.
I do just want to add one thing. The England Run area, as many of you know that are England Run residents or are familiar with England Run, it's a very dense area in a small geographic location. Historically, it's been very difficult for us to manage. We're trying to manage that density with the elementary schools that are around there. So it's been a struggle, a challenge in the past, and therefore the history of why did we move. Again, we were trying to relieve overcrowding in certain schools, and so the school board wrestled with that. They looked at the different options, and at the time that appeared to be the best move when we sent certain England Run neighborhoods to certain elementary schools. Things have changed. Growth has occurred in different areas, and hence our consultant has looked at it with independent eyes to see what they feel is the best approach for the redistricting.
I just want to mention that England Run North has 134 students.
Was the data set that was improperly coded the one ArcBridge used to do the redistricting analysis?
The data set that was provided to us, the only thing that may have been different was the minority and the free lunch information, but the rest of the data was good, and we used the correct data for redistricting analysis.
Why isn't elementary school number 18 already in the CIP, and when will it be?
That's a really good question that's been asked a lot. So, only thing I would just share with you is that the school board and board of supervisors are having conversations and trying to determine the criteria for a new school to be planned, designed, and built. And last night, the subcommittee of the school board met and to begin to define a criteria that they would like, the whole board has to act on it, but they would like to support. This Monday, I met with the county administrator to share my thoughts and what I believe will happen soon. I think actually next week there's a meeting of the chair and vice chair of the Board of Supervisors and the school board are getting together, and my hope, like I think everybody here, that we get clarity of what determines a new what number determines a new elementary school, and get that planned sooner than later.
factoring of bus ride times on plans A and B.
The factors that we looked at in when we were reviewing it were current bus times based on current data, which is what we have to work with, and anything that would be concerning to be brought forward to the panel and the board. And we saw nothing that was concerning as far as bus rides, but it was the times that we have based on current data versus what we were looking at.
How far on average do currently disconnected kids travel through other school zones?
As far as the disconnected zones right now, we have Park Ridge, which is, we have a pocket, or what we call an island, at Woodstream. And for Hampton Oaks, we have the two sections that are up on Route 1, Jeff Davis Highway, and they head south and go to Hampton Oaks. We have a section for Margaret Brent that's out by Plantation Drive. I'm sorry? England Run, yes. But those are the furthest ones that we have at the current time.
What considerations were made for our high proportion of military families that undergo numerous transitions in support of our country?
There were no overt plans to address the military population and their 2 or 3 year PCSing. So they were just embedded in the overall data within our community.
How will the redistricting impact rising 5th graders? And will transportation be provided for 5th graders who wish to remain at their current school?
5th graders, rising 5th graders are welcome to stay at their current school. However, it would be contingent upon parents being able to provide transportation.
If this rezoning is based off of a 10-year growth estimate, why are we implementing this change in a year when we're already moving the school year up?
The redistricting timing aligns with Rebuild Moncure Elementary School opening up, which adds capacity to the northern area of the county, as well as North Star Early Education Center opening up, which alleviates approximately 19 to 20 classrooms across the elementary schools across the county. So it aligns with that, with all that added capacity at all of our schools, or most of our schools.
The RFP called for 3 to 5 plans. Why are we only seeing 2 presented?
This particular question was asked Tuesday night, and the response was that as we started to evaluate what product we wanted, staff, along with Dr. Kisner, felt that the development of 2 plans was adequate for the school board to receive, and therefore that's the direction we came. The 2 to 3 was just a planning figure in our RFP, and then we started to whittle it down to 2. We felt 2 was appropriate.
What motive was the benchmark or the basis the plans attempt to address? What motive was the benchmark or the basis the plans attempt to address?
Well, we are trying to balance the enrollment across all the schools. As I showed you, there are 2 schools with only 65% capacity utilization. 65% capacity utilization, and then there are schools like Winding Creek there will be overcapacity and they will be overcrowded, so the goal was balancing the enrollment.
How can neighborhoods influence the school board to vote in favor of a specific plan?
Well, certainly you know that there's email, Facebook, and other avenues for the community to convey their thoughts and ideas to the school board. We also have them tonight in collecting these cards. So any communication with your school board member is the way that you should voice your opinion or your desire for one plan over the other.
Okay. We have 2 cards back to back.
Let me just maybe edit that a little bit. I would do less Facebook. Truthfully, a lot of our school board members are not on Facebook. I mean, I know that's your right to go on Facebook. But you won't be talking directly to the school board. So if I understood the question, how could we influence the school board? I think you're doing it tonight. A lot of you have been sending emails. Again, come to school board meetings. But, you know, social media, I understand that I'm on social media, but I don't want you to be the impression if you put something on Facebook, all 7 school board members are seeing it.
Okay. We have 2 questions back to back from 2 different people, but they're very similar, feeder patterns. One question is, what is a feeder school or pattern? And then the second question, how many schools or students will go to different middle schools and high schools than their peers?
Okay. Feeder pattern is, so Stafford County doesn't have a true feeder pattern where this group of 3 elementary schools feeds into this 1 middle school and these 2 middle schools feed into this 1 high school. What we have in Stafford County is mainly geographic progression, so every address carries an elementary school assignment, middle school assignment, high school assignment. So that would be the general term of the feeder pattern, so just how you progress throughout the school division across the school levels.
Oh, sorry. Okay, the second one asks, how many schools or students would go to different middle schools and high schools than their peers?
Yeah, we certainly don't have that data at our fingertips. I'm not sure how easily it would be to collect it, but we do have, we can look into that and find out if we can provide that.
Okay. Would any current students be rerouted to a different school in our subdivision in England Run North? Would any current students be rerouted to a different school in my subdivision of England Run North?
England Run North right now goes to Hartford and Falmouth, and in Plan A, they would go to Falmouth and Brent, but in Plan B, they stay in Falmouth.
All right. Can we use the lessons that we learned from this painful evolution to have the school district put pressure on the county government to stop overdeveloping Stafford? Can you do this?
So my answer is it's a we. So if we want to put pressure on for new things, we do it. I don't know if that's a comment or a question, but.
Okay. Transportation, I'm not sure if you answered this, but how much longer would the bus ride difference be between Plan A and Plan B? Not sure, did she answer that? I don't know.
The evaluations that we did based on current data are that there will not be any bus ride. It's difficult. We now have some bus rides that are longer than others. There won't be a longer bus ride in that district. It might just change which students are on the bus longer or shorter, based on now that the students will be going to a school closer to where they live. But there, from what we can see with current data, there won't be a longer bus ride in any particular district than there is now. It will just change which students.
How will student achievement outcomes be evaluated as a result from redistricting impacts?
So that question was also asked on Tuesday night, a similar one. Yeah, so again, the quality of instruction that your children will receive, and I say this because I'm in the buildings often and look at the data, I feel very comfortable saying it. We have 17 really good elementary schools, and in our elementary schools we've got really good teachers and we have really good leadership. And what we do know that schools that keep on growing will also have larger classrooms and larger number of children in the room, and rooms will, special rooms could potentially be removed, which is already occurring. So if we continue on this trajectory that we're doing, I could see adverse impact. What we're trying to do is balance the 17 schools, but the quality of instruction, I'm very confident will remain strong regardless of what school your child goes to. Well, there's a lot of ways of measuring it. Of course, the one that measures everything is the standards of learning. That's one. I will rather not that be the only measure. I think it will be parental and parental and student satisfaction. There'll be a survey that you'll be getting in the spring, a new survey that, well, actually, let me strike. I think that they're not doing the parent part this year. The state's implementing a new survey, but I think that's going in the following year. It's going to be test scores. It's going to be children that are given opportunities such as what we've been calling maker spaces, spaces where children could work critically together, work collaboratively together, protecting art rooms, music rooms, and so on. So it's going to be the educational experience along with achievement. There's another assessment, I don't want to, there's something called the PALS assessment that we evaluate. So we'll look at the data, but we do that now. Okay, you could go on the Department of Ed website, you could go on our website, and you could look, you could compare, if you want, all 17 schools at this moment.
In the first town hall meeting, we were told that one county employee restructured the APUs. If so, why was this the responsibility of only one person? Did a committee or the school board approve these APUs, or was the work of this lone employee accepted without oversight?
Lone soldier. So there were, the planning unit changes were not approved by the school board. The planning unit geodatabase is a staff-maintained database that aids in the projection process as well as redistricting. Why was it me? I'm the supervisor of GIS for the school division, and it's a GIS data set. So,
what quality assurance procedures did you have in place to ensure the mistakes with demographics didn't occur in the planning analysis?
And the way we did our QA/QC analysis was we looked at the maps, we looked at the data, and we looked at the percentages, and we shared it with the subject matter experts so that if there was any anomaly or anything that they did not expect, they would show it to us, but that was our QA/QC process. We did a lot of automatic QA/QC, but we also had to go and do some QA/QC manually and look at each and every neighborhood.
can you repeat that real quick, Sheree? Just want to make sure that if I need to answer it. Yeah, I want to.
What quality assurance procedures did you have in place to ensure the mistakes with demographics didn't occur in the planning analysis?
So, as I understand it, the planning analysis did not incorporate the demographics real time. They were more summary statistics that were calculated after the consultants prepared the plan. So, they didn't have an impact, to my understanding, of plan creation, just in the summary tables that supporting data for the two plans.
I just want to add on, what we did was we worked with the numbers and not the demographic characteristics. They were whatever was provided. So Matt did the QA/QC and gave us an updated.
With the shortened summer this year, how are you going to ensure a smooth transition and appropriately place students in the new schools?
So that's a really important question. So the school board, as you saw in the timeline, my hope as superintendent, because whatever decision the school board makes, then I get the responsibility to make sure that it's implemented correctly. So there's a lot of things that has to be done. One, we have to work with families so they truly understand where their child's going. Two, we have to make sure transportation does all the routing. Third, we have to start redirecting staff based on the new numbers, resources that I already mentioned, like English language learners, and if there's programs for children with special needs. So there's going to be a significant amount of work that needs to be done by the time the board takes final action to the time your children return in middle of August.
Who made the proposed changes to the low incidence program placements, and were elementary administrators consulted?
As a part of the entire redistricting effort for the 17 schools, all of our low incidence programs were considered because they are an integral part of those 17 schools. So we have approximately 45 low incidence programs for autism, emotional behavioral support, intellectual disabilities, and multiple disabilities. We are working with those administrators based on what's adopted by the board, and we'll work with them to transition based on what plan is accepted.
How can we as parents help this change go as smooth as possible for the administration, teachers, and our children?
So one of the things that will definitely occur, the principals, once the redistricting plan is approved, will start having a number of open houses and inviting families that will be new to that school and begin to discuss, have a dialogue on the partnership between home and school, and be able to answer questions and also address the question that was just asked and what parents can do to help. I will just tell you real quickly, in the last school division I left, we redistricted the whole school system, but parents that were currently at that school did an open house for new parents at that school, and that parents found that to be very positive experience because they could hear from parents on their perspective of the school and what were some of the parent partnership activities.
If there are overcrowding issues at Winding Creek or other schools, why not help them out without moving over 3,000 students?
I think this question has been answered before. The goal of the redistricting was to balance across the entire division and all 17 schools. So we're just not localized, we're not focused into one area, just Winding Creek. As was presented, we have 5 schools that are at 90% or thereabouts and above, and so we're concerned with that. And so we have some schools that are very low in utilization of their capacity. There are a number of schools in between those that need to be adjusted also. So we looked at it holistically at a school division to try to balance all 17 schools.
I would like to add to this, it's not like that if I work with Winding Creek, it affects the neighboring schools. And when it affects the neighboring schools, then it affects the other neighboring schools. So it's not like that I can work or we can work with one school in isolation.
Will there be modifications to the plans given the new demographic data?
Again, I think that Dr. Kisner already addressed that question.
How can transportation and the consultants be sure that Plan A and Plan B are viable options when a thorough deep dive into exact bus routes and commute times has not been conducted?
Transportation reviewed both plans, Plan A and Plan B, after determining what our longest bus routes were at any of the schools based on current data. To try and offer exact bus routes based on data we don't have wouldn't be presenting information that would be helpful. What we could do was, based on the opinion of our experienced route coordinators and supervisors, look at what the new zoning did and predict whether any of the routes in the new zones would actually end up having a longer route than currently exists at that school. And that's what we did.
Okay. You're welcome. Will there be additional teaching staff added to Ferry Farm to accommodate the additional 100 students?
Again, I think that question has been answered. If the school board decides on a specific plan, the instructional staff and Dr. Kisner will look at that and see where de-staffing or increased staffing will need to go at the different schools based on the distribution of the students.
Since the question was not answered, I will ask again. Were teachers and administrators consulted before the low incidence program placement proposed?
We did the program projection or proposal based on the same criteria that we were using with everyone else, to try to get these students closer to their neighborhood schools, to reduce the time that they're transferring into schools or riding the buses into schools. We can work and consult with our teachers and our administrators, and we will once the board determines what path is chosen. But we went with the same process that was used for the 17 elementary schools as a whole program view.
Many counties around us, Fairfax, Prince William, Loudoun, for example, have enjoyed explosive growth. I've never heard of redistricting such as we're experiencing here. Have you reached out to find out how they avoided this recurrent issue to help us in Stafford County?
So I used to work for Prince William County Schools. They redistricted every year, sometimes multiple times a year. And this is by far, from a community meeting perspective, this is as best behaved as I've ever seen community meetings. So I think that the process is going well. This Stafford County School Board chose to hire a consultant. Where at my time in Prince William, we did it in-house, but that's really the largest difference, the community meetings and how well they're going, and the consultant being hired.
At what capacity percentage would we begin seeing a loss of special area classrooms, like, for example, art or music or intervention classrooms?
Can you repeat that, Sheree?
At what capacity percentage would we begin seeing a loss of special area classrooms, like art or music or intervention classrooms?
Certainly, once you get above, and it's a little arbitrary depending on the school, but roughly about 95% of capacity. That school is significantly up against their classroom caps. So that's where, you know, if there's a classroom that needs to spread because if they don't add another teacher, they're going to exceed their class maxes. That's how those special classes, such as art and music, get infringed upon. But you can generally, and that's general, 95% or so.
Are there any other neighborhoods besides Hampton Oaks that are split among 3, 4, or more schools?
Hampton Oaks was the existing boundaries of Hampton Oaks divides the neighborhood into Winding Creek and Hampton Oaks. Now with Plan A, we are doing Park Ridge and Winding Creek and Park Ridge and Hampton Oaks. So, 2.
What is the best way? Oh.
I know for sure Aquia Harbor has been, it's split into schools in Plan A, but we can provide that information. Like I said, in Plan A, we have 11 neighborhoods that have been split, and in Plan B, 16. Is that your question?
I can read the question again. Are there any other neighborhoods besides Hampton Oaks that are split among 3, 4, or more schools?
I don't think so, but what we can do is we can look into it and get back to you with the answer.
What is the best way to fund a new elementary school? Is there tax money available to be appropriated to the cause, or do we need a ballot measure for additional taxes?
So, obviously, you know, the school board doesn't have the authority in Virginia to appropriate money for a new school. So that's the Board of Supervisors. The typical way, and Stafford tends to follow the typical way, is that the Board of Supervisors make the decision, and then they go out to bond, and basically they borrow the money, and they look at their ability to pay it back and how much debt they're able to have. Well, a question that was asked at the last meeting, and it is true in certain communities, certain states, it's more typical than atypical, there would be a referendum and let the public decide if money should be allocated to new schools. But what I'm just saying respectfully, just not pointing fingers, that the question earlier, how do we move and influence a new elementary school? I don't want to speak for the school board in this, but I think I am. There's no one disagrees that a new elementary school is not needed. I would just ask, you know, the passion you have about this topic, which I greatly appreciate, I would also ask you to maybe channel it to your Board of Supervisor representative and let he or she know your thoughts about putting money towards a new school.
How do we ensure that bus rides do not get any longer than they already are for kids on Marlboro Point?
That was one of the particular areas that we looked at with both plans, and currently, as anyone who lives out there knows, that is one of our longer bus rides. And from what we are looking at, we don't see a concern of any time difference that would be a considerable concern going to either one of the schools. It's still going to be a long bus ride. We can't change the distance from a school.
Why do the APUs include commercial zones?
Part of the topology that's in effect for the geodatabase is no gaps and no overlaps. That's just kind of a general principle. So if we excluded commercial resident or commercial areas, you're going to have gaps in the planning unit. The planning units have to be fully encompassing of the entire county. Obviously no students get generated from commercial areas, but that's why they are included in planning units.
Rather than email answers only to those who ask the questions, why not create a web page showing the answers to the questions? And actually, this is what we're actually going to do. So we're going to, on our web page for redistricting, we're going to present a list of the questions as well as the answers so that you can see all of the questions and the answers. So actually, we're already working on the one from Tuesday night at Drew Middle School, and we'll be placing the questions and the answers from tonight on the website for Friday and Tuesday. So that's a good point, and we are doing that. Next question. Why did the nice young man double the APUs in our county? How did the nice young man do this? Is the school board okay with this? Thank you.
Thank you. The planning units were reduced in geography because it allows finer resolution when you're trying to balance enrollment across multiple schools, as well as it by separating the unit types. So if you have one area that has townhouses and single-family houses all in one planning unit, for the projection process, it's cleaner on that side of it if you break out the unit types for like density. So that was part of the planning unit redesign, and as well as reducing the size of them to increase the resolution that we can get through redistricting efforts, as well as creating finer areas of adjustment throughout the county. Of Aquia Harbor? The apartments, the Aquia Town Center. I believe that actually, I'll have to take a look at that, but I believe that Aquia Town Center is its own planning unit separated from that beginning of Aquia Harbor, but I'll take a look just to make sure. Sure.
Okay, moving on to our next question. How many countywide elementary redistricting of the same scope as Stafford County has Arkbridge completed?
This was a question that was asked on Tuesday's meeting as well. We have done 8, and the last one that we did was for Yorktown in Virginia. We have also done San Diego County, which is pretty big.
Were any school board members consulted during this process prior to the presentation?
No. The board intentionally hired a consultant to keep it as objective as possible, and they learned the information just at a school board meeting. And so there was an intentional decision to hire outside people like Matt and Scott that have expertise to help drive the decision. But at the end, the school board makes the final determination of the redistricting plan.
Why was Stafford listed as top 5 capacity at 90% and then shown 79% for 2019-2020?
Stafford is in 2019-2020, it is at 76.92%, and that is based on Plan A, because we changed the area, and these percentages are based on projection. And the idea is if we reduce the area, then we would reduce the enrollment. So in Plan B, we have 79.21%. So these percentages are coming after we redrew the attendance areas, and we use the projected data. So currently, if nothing was done, yeah, Stafford is at 90%.
Is program capacity based on the occupancy rates as determined for each school by the fire marshal? Yes. Oh, go ahead.
No, it's not determined by occupancy load of the classrooms. It's determined based on staffing standards that are approved by Stafford County School Board, as well as programmatic restrictions that exist in each and every school specifically.
Please explain, because I don't understand, how the creation of Plan A differed from the creation of Plan B. Were different criteria prioritized?
For Plan A and Plan B, we use the same criteria, and we just wanted to present you with two options, but the criteria was the same, which is balancing enrollment across 17 elementary schools.
Will parents who work for Stafford County Public Schools be able to choose where they want to have their child go to school? Yes. I'm not sure if you answered this or not, you might have. For the map of the APUs with the current enrollments, would you describe your methodology for using those numbers to create enrollment projections for the next 5 years?
Say that one again?
Okay. For the map of the APUs with the current enrollments, would you describe your methodology for using those numbers to create enrollment projections for the next 5 years?
Okay, so the map with the planning units, I'm assuming the one that's on the redistricting website. Planning units feed the projection process two ways. Cohort progression is calculated at the planning unit level. That encompasses in-migration, out-migration, as well as transiency within the school division. And then also new development that's occurring. So when a new development gets proposed, it's placed on the map, it's converted to a centroid, and then we know exactly what planning unit to allocate those units. That is how the planning units are integrated in the projections, as best I can answer.
Okay. When capacity numbers were determined for each school, were any areas of the school considered as sacred, such as art, music, teachers' workspace? Sacred meaning they would remain as art, music, and not made into classrooms?
Yes, the art and music classrooms were left off of the classroom inventory. They are assigned 0 capacity. Specific resource space needs that exist at every school, which is a data-driven model, so we have the number of reading specialists, math specialists, focus teachers, SLD teachers, etc. Those teachers were allocated space, and that resource space does not count for program capacity or capacity at all in the projection model or in the program capacity model.
What is the staffing standard? How old is it, and is it approved by the school board?
I believe the current staffing standard was approved in 2016. And what is it? It determines the ideal and maximum class sizes permitted to guide staffing throughout Stafford County. And yes, they are a board-approved item.
Has the consultant thought of any changes that might be needed after Tuesday night's town hall meeting?
The purpose of these meetings is to present Plan A and Plan B to you, and we are getting feedback from you, and we are going to present all your requests to the board and to Stafford County Public Schools Planning Department, and based on what they say, we will be ready to make the changes.
What thought was given students who have only been in the county less than a year and are still adjusting?
None.
Okay. Sorry. How will these changes affect the teachers directly?
Okay, again, class sizes determine, the number of students determine how many classes. So teachers, if schools are gaining students, if schools are losing children, teachers could potentially be redirected to a school that has more children. And if a school is, and the opposite holds true of children, if a school's losing children, then that school would have less teachers.
Where was Moncure in the high capacity, low capacity part of the presentation?
Moncure is not in the low capacity or the high capacity categories. The only reason why Moncure gets affected because the disconnected areas of Park Ridge and Hampton Oaks, the students, the kids living there are closer to Moncure, and they were assigned to Moncure, and that is the reason why Moncure got affected.
Why is Austin Ridge being considered to have part of the subdivision split under Plan A?
Although Burns was not in the high capacity or the low capacity categories, but when we were looking at projections and looking out in the fourth year, it was getting up to that capacity, and in order to release Burns, we looked at Austin Ridge, and that was one of the possibilities in Plan A. In Plan B, we have not done that.
Is one plan proving to be more popular over the other?
That's your choice. We've been hearing about, some people have been saying about Plan A, please go for Plan A, and some are saying, we want Plan B.
Exactly as she described it. It's Plan A and Plan B, and people, depending on how they're impacted. I'm going to say one comment, and then we're moving on. If the board does Plan C, I'm sure there'll be other people that will be impacted. You know, we just have to be recognizing that there's Plan A and Plan B. Whatever plan we have, there will be an impact group. So the question before, why just 2 plans? Because I think this feedback makes it more manageable to compare and contrast. And then if the board wants to alter, then a Plan C would develop.
How did opening the North Star facility impact the new class student enrollment for the elementary schools?
So the North Star Early Childhood Education Center is the former Fredericksburg Christian School that the school division acquired earlier this year, or late last year. That affected the elementary schools by removing or allowing for the removal of all of our early childhood special education classes that were housed in elementary schools to be split between the Gary Melchers complex, which houses some early childhood classes now, as well as Head Start. And so some of the Head Start will move from Gary Melchers to North Star, and some ECSE classes move from elementary schools to North Star, as well as Gary Melchers.
This year, our school, Park Ridge, eliminated double loads. In Plan A and B, will double load transportation be needed?
When we look at the plans for transportation, planning double loads isn't something that we do deliberately. We have to look at what the capacities are, what the transportation situation is, and we'll just look at the information at that time. But we're always looking to try and do away with double loads.
Have you talked with the current administration at Moncure about losing roughly 72% of their current student population?
I think Principal Mackey and his staff have been in consultation with members of the central office staff about that. He certainly is embracing the proposed change, and he'll do it like all the other principals are going to. They're going to accept the kids that come to their school. So he is aware, and his staff is aware.
As a teacher, I would argue that balancing demographics is an integral part of balancing school populations. While Arkbridge did not use that criteria, does anyone on the panel feel that demographics should be a part of the bigger picture?
Demographics, where I see, is tied to what I said earlier, class size reduction, because that will help us understand the staffing patterns. Again, the children in our school system, regardless of their background, always and should get a high-quality education. And the criteria, again, should not change for them. So if the objective is to try to keep them as close as possible to their school, that's what should occur. So while you might see some fluctuation in certain demographic groups, specifically what we call free and reduced lunch or economically disadvantaged based on the federal language, and English language learner only means that those children who qualify for English language services or meet the criteria are now going to schools that are tied to the criteria in which we shared.
For the school board, with the process of sharing all emails, if we have multiple comments to make, is it easier if all comments are put in one email or multiple emails that each have their own theme in the comment section?
School board. I think if you could put in one, we're all in, all right? So if people want to consolidate comments into one email, it might be easier, but that's your choice.
Well, this concludes the meeting. Thank you all so much for attending. The next elementary school redistricting meeting will take place on January 23rd at H.H. Poole Middle School. And again, we have two school board meetings, February 12th and February 26th. And you can also voice your concerns during the public comment. And again, we will post all of the questions and answers on our redistricting page on the school division website. Thank you so much, and please be safe getting home tonight.